Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Real Raging Celt channel. I am Richard Jensen, coming to you live from my overpriced studio apartment in Ashland, Oregon. And tonight is Physical Media Saturday, and we are going to be discussing a couple of my favorite pieces from my collection. The 4K sets to Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather Trilogy and Apocalypse Now. The former from Paramount Pictures, the latter from Lionsgate. Let me just take a moment to wet my whistle here a sec. Hey, that's good water. And let me pull these bad boys from my stack. Let's get started. First up, Godfather Trilogy, released by Paramount Home Video. It's all three movies. It's The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which is Coppola's re-edit of Godfather 3, and a couple of bonus discs. And the packaging is decent enough. It's cardboard, but each film is in its own little sleeve right here. And there's not a hell of a lot to say about these movies. They have kind of become intertwined with American culture. There are kids, Gen Zs, who are coming out of the wombs right now, who can basically quote the opening monologue, "I Believe in America," from the first film. It is part of the landscape. It is in the It is in the American DNA. But they're absolutely terrific movies. The transfers are absolutely gorgeous. Paramount did great justice to the original work of Gordon Willis. If Gordon Willis were I don't want to say if he were alive, because I'm pretty sure when they did the initial restorations, Willis was alive to help supervise that, even though his eyesight, I think at the time, was kind of failing. But if Willis were alive and saw these 4Ks on a good screen, he would never stop weeping. They're that beautiful. And if you've got a really good screen, a good OLED screen, the blacks are just super black, just absolutely gorgeous. The colors the color work is incredibly modulated by Willis. I absolutely recommend getting the set. And by the way, those of you who don't know, Gordon Willis was one of the great cinematographers of the 70s and 80s. Not quite as active in the 90s and 100s because, as I said before, his eyesight got to a point where it was starting to fail. But man, when he was active, one of the best to ever do it. Not just the Godfather movies. You've got, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, good number of Woody Allen movies. I know. I just got a copper taste in my mouth just saying his name right now, which is aggravating because back in my teenage years, I was a big Woody Allen fan. So, but now, no bueno. So, no. But again, Willis is one of the great cinematographers of the 70s. Pakula's All the President's Men. Actually, I think Willis shot most of Pakula's Paranoid Trilogy, Clute, All the President's Men, and The Parallax View, and all three of those movies are absolutely gorgeous to look at. Do yourself a favor, and if you can find them online or in your video stores, get your hands on anything Gordon Willis has ever shot, because the man was one of the best to ever do it. Now, the original novel the movies come from, it was written by Mario Puzo, who later on went to have successful career as a very well-paid screenwriter and novelist. He'd written a couple novels before The Godfather, but The Godfather was kind of the breakthrough for him. And he has expressly admitted in interviews that one he wrote just for the money. This was meant to be a popular novel. And I gotta tell you, I read the novel when I was in high school, and I can tell you that thing is trashy as hell. That's not an insult, by the way. That's more just a descriptor. The original Godfather novel was meant to be just this to be a commercial read. You know, it's a beach read. You're on vacation, you're on the beach, you're relaxing, you want you want a good easy read. The Godfather is that novel. It's very densely populated. The characters are vivid. It's a fast read. It's probably the opposite of, say, Thomas Pynchon. No, again, no shade to anybody. I'm just talking about styles. I'm not placing a moral judgment on any of that. But one thing I have to point at, tangent, I kind of have to go on. If you've ever read the original novel, there is a subplot in that thing, which I am very happy Coppola cut, because it would have probably tanked the movie. In the novel, you know how in the beginning of the first Godfather movie, Sonny's banging the bridesmaid at his sister's wedding? That bridesmaid has an entire subplot, and I'm going to try to phrase this as delicately as possible because I don't want to get in trouble with Twitch. How do I phrase this? The woman had trouble climaxing because of her down below area was that's the best I can say about it. And the reason she kept sleeping with Sonny was because he was the only man. And again, this is the novel. I'm not condoning this. I'm not where size doesn't matter and all that. But in the novel, Sonny is very well endowed, and he's the only one who can make a climax because of the size of his Yahoo. That's probably the right one. Anyway, that's bad enough. It gets worse. As the novel goes on, Sonny gets killed at the causeway. She ends up moving to Las Vegas, and she meets a plastic surgeon. And it's been years since I read the novel, so I forget how the topic came up, but the topic of her comes up, and he says, "Oh, I can fix that." So she gets plastic surgery to have her hoo-ha compressed, and to make matters worse, the plastic surgeon ends up marrying her. I said it was a trashy novel, and I meant it. And man, I know in my heart that Coppola took one look at that subplot and said, "Yeah, I'm not doing that. That's not good." And you also know in your heart that somehow Robert Evans was behind him saying, "Come on, man, do it. That's gonna get asses in the seats. That's gold, baby. That's gold." Trust me, if you know anything about Robert Evans, you know he would have loved to have had that subplot in the movie. But thankfully, Coppola prevailed, and the movie is now a classic, and the novel is its own thing. Godfather 2. The other two movies, well, Godfather 2 is also a stone classic. Coppola was able to top himself on that one because he figured out a way into the material by using some of the early stuff in the novel about Don Corleone's early childhood, and he used that to comment on the action involving Michael. Michael's probably I don't know if it's the first time it's ever been done in a movie, but it's probably one of the earliest things I can remember of a film having two parallel parts, or parallel plots, and then just flipping back and forth between them. And it is it's a stunning movie. Some people would argue that Godfather 2 is better than Godfather 1. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but man, I would hate to quote John Wayne in Real Bravo. I would hate to live on the difference. It's very close. They're both brilliant movies. Godfather 3, not so much. That there were some problems with it. Coppola was fighting with Paramount. When was he never fighting with Paramount? Initially didn't want to do it. And initially in the original draft, Tom Hagen was supposed to be there, and Tom Hagen was supposed to pass on. And Walter Murchett actually said in an interview that Coppola had this kind of fairy tale thing where the prince goes out and one by one his brothers are killed. But by Luke, because they couldn't make a deal with Duvall, you couldn't have Tom Hagen in the movie, so that diminished the third movie almost immediately. You lose Tom Hagen and you lose that. And considering how central Hagen was to the plot of the first two movies, it is a diminishment. And then there's the whole thing about Sofia. I'm going to go on record as saying I don't think Sofia Coppola is that bad. I don't think she's great, but she's trying her best. And it's not like, Coppola put her in just for nepotism. This was more of a situation where Winona Ryder was supposed to play the role, but she was exhausted. She'd done a bunch of movies back to back, and she just couldn't. She just kind of collapsed. So Coppola basically kind of, and that's the Coppolas. It's a circus family. If someone drops out, they throw somebody else in. And so he looked at Sofia and said, "Yeah, you're the right age. You do it." And again, Coppola's doing her best. She's trying, but she's not great. I don't think again, not terrible, but Winona Ryder would have done a better job. And honestly, it should be noted that Sofia Coppola has become a really terrific filmmaker in her own right. So good for her. She is, and that happens. This is one. And now I should point out that as I said before, the third film in the trilogy, Godfather 3, was recut by Coppola a few years ago and renamed The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. Now, as I said before, the film is not as good as the first two movies, but I will give Coppola credit. His recut kind of closes the gap a little bit. It's better. It's still not as great as the first two movies, but he comes within spitting distance, and that's kind of impressive. And it actually is an improvement. Coppola tightened some stuff, swapped out some stuff that was. I will say this much: if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you, but in the ending of the Godfather Coda is. The death is meant to be more metaphorical. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I don't want to spoil the film for anybody. Now, for you purists, they do have the theatrical version of Godfather Part 3 on Blu-ray. It's not in 4K, but it's on Blu-ray, so you could say, well, wait, let me double check that. No, it is 3. It is in Blu-ray, so if you you still have the theatrical version if you want to go that way too. Also, you've got your tons of extras. You got commentary tracks by Coppola. You got featurettes. You got stuff about the editing, the music, little deebs and dobs there. It is as fully packed a home video set as you're going to get, and worthy of all three movies. Now, the one problem I have with this set is the packaging. It's not great. I mean, this is very kind of thin cardboardy stuff, and you can see it's kind of worn around the edges. Now, you compare that, and here, let me pull this off my shoe. You compare that with a couple weeks ago we talked about the Arrow edition of the Schwarzenegger Conan movies, and I mean, look at that. That is nice, thick cardboard. That is stiff. Now I imagine Paramount was trying to keep the price point low because this had to be a pretty expensive set to put up, redoing the transfers, gathering all the extras together, relicensing everything. It's a chunk of change. So I can imagine them kind of cheapening out a little on the packaging, but it's still something you want to be careful of, because you do want to protect the discs, because you're spending a lot of money on the discs, and you don't want them getting scratched up or broken or anything, so you want the casing to be well. The packaging is decent enough, which is actually more than I can say for the next film we're going to discuss, Apocalypse Now, Final Cut. Look at this. Again, I'm sympathetic to Lionsgate. They're trying to keep the price point low on this thing, and this is an insanely stacked set. But look at this. I mean, it's all fold out like this. It's unwieldy. They should have all these discs should have at least 2 discs per case. It's unwieldy. It's ridiculous. It's hard to hold together. It's not a very, and the cardboard on it is thin. It's, again, sympathy to Lionsgate trying to keep a low price point on this, but you guys need to do better on your packaging. That's all I have to say about that. Having said that, this is, if you are a fan of Apocalypse Now, and most people are, I love the movie myself. I have some issues with it, which we'll get into, but it is gorgeous. It has all 3 cuts of the movie. It has the final cut, which was the final edit that Coppola did a few years ago. There's the Apocalypse Now Redux, which Coppola had done several years earlier, and the original theatrical version. So you've got all 3 of the 3 versions of Apocalypse Now set up. And they are... And the transfers of all 3 versions of the movie are absolutely gorgeous. The film was shot by the legendary Italian composer Vittorio Straho, who is just an absolute magician with light. This is the man who shot Bertolucci's Last Tango in Paris. He shot The Conformist, which is another terrific Bertolucci film, and I know about the Bertolucci Last Tango in Paris, Maria Schneider thing, and yeah, it's a yikes. I agree. That film has an asterisk next to it because of that. But it is still gorgeously shot. He has worked for years. He shot Warren Beatty's Reds. He's also worked with, if you'll pardon the expression, Woody Allen. I haven't seen the Woody Allen films yet. I'm going to wait until Woody dies before I start going down that rabbit hole of late Woody stuff. Anyway. But they are beautiful transfers. As far as a preference to the cuts, I don't really have one. I've seen all 3 of them, and all 3 do different things. I will say, if Apocalypse Now Redux is not the best Apocalypse Now, it is the most Apocalypse Now. It has a lot of the footage from the original French plantation material that Coppola included in the movie to help add historical context, because the French had colonized Vietnam before the Americans came in, so you get that kind of backstory there, and it is lovely. It's got some nice stuff in it, but Coppola could never figure out how to incorporate it into the original movie. But he, with the help of Walter Murch, managed to figure out a way to get that into Redux. I don't think it's in Final Cut. It's been a while since I've seen the Final Cut edition. I need to do that sometime in the next week or so. So I don't remember if it's in there. But again, it is very good. And we have to give a shout out to the original writer of this thing, John Milius. Absolutely phenomenal screenwriter. We talked about him a few weeks ago when we talked about the Arrow editions of Conan the Barbarian. He wrote and directed the original with Schwarzenegger. He's also written and directed Red Dawn, which I'm personally not crazy about, but I know has its fans. The man has written... He's also responsible for a film called Big Wednesday, which is kind of a John Ford-like film about surfing. in Milos' younger days, he was actually an avid surfer, so I've never seen Big Wednesday, but I've heard from friends who have seen it that it is really, really good. So that's one I gotta kind of put on the list. And biggest disappointment in my life, and I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, is that he never got to make his King Conan movie. He had actually written for Schwarzenegger a King Conan movie that he was going to direct and the Wachowskis were going to produce, but then Schwarzenegger decided to run for governor, and then Milos had a stroke, so he's kind of out of the game. So as a result, we're never going to see that movie. But man, I would love to read that script. If anybody out there can point me to a PDF of Milos' King Conan script, I would really appreciate it, because I would love to read that sucker. It's probably outstanding. And one of the fun stories about Apocalypse Now is that this was in development for years with American Zoetrope, but at one point, and this is like very early 70s, maybe back before even Coppola directing The Godfather, Milos had written the film, and George Lucas was actually going to direct it, and he was going to direct it by shooting it actually in Vietnam while the war was still going on 16mm cameras. And that's just a ridiculously insane goddamn way to make a movie. I mean, I see where Lucas was going with it. He wanted to give it kind of a cinema verite thing, but going into a war zone debate, that's, you know, and again, I love George Lucas, the man, one of the best to ever do it, prequels aside, but we're not going to go down that road right now. But the idea of George Lucas running around in North Vietnam, shooting actors with a Bell & Howell 16mm camera, why people are shooting at his head is just, it's a thought I can't wrap my head around. It's just Coppola doing it in the Philippines, much easier way to do it. Less like, not as dangerous as being shot at by the Viet Cong while you're trying to make a movie, because I don't think the Viet Cong would have appreciated American film companies shooting in their backyard, especially while Kissinger was bombing them. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not tagged for politics. But yeah, it's got a ton of extras in it. You've got interviews Coppola did with many members of the cast and crew, and you've got about the camera work. You got featurettes about the camera work. I'm repeating myself. Fine, I'm repeating myself. About the camera work, about the editing, about the sound mix, and they also includes on a separate disc the documentary Heart of Darkness. Now, while Coppola was shooting Apocalypse Now, his wife, Eleanor, had a 16mm camera, and she was shooting behind the scenes stuff. I mean, she was shooting all aspects of the filming. She was shooting Francis slowly starting to crack under the pressure, because that shoot was a nightmare, stretched on for weeks past the original schedule, went way over budget. Martin Sheen had a damn heart attack making that movie. So, probably one of the most, as far as just stressful filmmaking situations, it's up there with Cameron in the Abyss. It was that tough of a shoot. So that documentary is included with the set, and on the same disc as that is a lovely interview that Steven Soderbergh did with Coppola at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2019. And it's kind of fun, you know. It's two professionals shooting the shit, talking about doing what they do. And I will say, at the 27-minute mark, the subject turns to Brando, who if you remember, was supposed to play a Green Beret colonel, but he shows up on the set just massively overweight. He hadn't read the book, he hadn't read the script, and Coppola only had him for 3 weeks. If he went beyond 3 weeks, he had to pay Brando more. And Coppola's talking about working with Mick. Well, Marlon's a big kid, and like any kid, he's gonna not be good. And Soderbergh's just sitting there, and you can tell by the look on his face, he's just going. And he did a good job of not actually saying it, but you can almost hear him saying, "How the hell did you get through that shoot without strangling that son of a bitch? I would have punched him in the tape. Because Soderbergh's famously a no-nonsense filmmaker, and he does not suffer fools wisely, and he does not. He's one of those guys who just likes to go in, get it done, and get it done fast. So here, he obviously his respect for Coppola is apparent in the novel, but in the interview. But at the same time, he's thinking to himself, "Why did you put yourself through this? You couldn't have recast, my God." I have very mixed feelings about Brando during this period of his career, and I have to be honest. When Brando finally shows up in the movie, the film falls apart a little bit for me. It doesn't take a nosedive, but that last third doesn't really land for me as it should, and then part of that is Brando. Again, film is a subjective medium. Your mileage may absolutely vary, so take it as such. But yeah, the transfers for all the movies are absolutely gorgeous. It is, packaging aside, an outstanding set. It's like you've got about, let me see it here. You got like 6 discs here. You got the films on Blu-ray and 4K. You've also got 2 discs of extras, including the Heart of Darkness documentary, which is actually on the bottom here. They are absolutely. It is an absolutely wonderful set. If you've got the money, shell it out for that. If you love Apocalypse Now, this set is going to satisfy you. This is as definitive a set devoted to a movie as you're absolutely going to get. And the behind-the-scenes stuff is amazing because, as Soderbergh said in the interview with Coppola, it felt like a film production had never been more thoroughly documented. And thank God for that, because it's just, again, I don't know whether or not just casual viewers are going to enjoy this stuff, but sickos like me, we eat that shit up. But so I'm recommending both sets to you, both the Godfather and the Apocalypse Now set. They are both absolutely delightful. They are great sets. You should absolutely get your hands on them. And I'm also going to recommend to you some supplementary. Hang on, let me find it here. Yep. This is an interesting book. This is the Conversation. Hang on. Yeah, here we go. The Conversations, Walter Murch and the Art of Editing Film by Michael Ongin. The original author, I hope I didn't butcher his name too much. The original author of The English Patient, who got to know Murch when Murch was working with Anthony Minghella on The English Patient. And so he actually spent several months interviewing Walter Murch to pick his brain about his life, about the how movies are made, how he goes about editing movies, how he designs film. He talked a lot about Return to Oz, which, for my money, is a vastly underrated Oz film. If you guys have never seen it, it's 1985. It's on Disney Plus, if memory serves. You should absolutely watch it if you're an Oz fan, or even if you're not an Oz fan, you're just a fan of good filmmaking. That film is terrific. Yeah, it might be scarier for younger kids, but so was the original, just not with it. just the original hit songs. But it's fascinating, and believe me, this is one of those books. If you are a person who makes or is interested in film, and as you can tell, my copy is pretty dog-eared. I've thumbed through this thing a lot. But it is, from soup to nuts, everything you need to know about post-production in film, about how to design sounds, sound construction, editing. It is a fascinating read. Walter Murch is probably one of the smartest guys to be working in film right now. And also, given recent events, I'm going to recommend another movie that I don't have on 4K because I don't know if there's a home video release for it. It's a film called Coup 53. It was co-written and directed by an Iranian English filmmaker named Targan Armani. I hope I'm getting his name right. Right, and it's basically a documentary about how the CIA and MI6 collaborated to overthrow the democratic government of Iran and reinstall the Shah of Iran, so he would be friendly to international oil companies. It is a terrific documentary. Walter Murch helped edit the movie. He was very much involved in this thing. And quick personal story, I actually had the opportunity to meet Mr. Armani on a Zoom breakout room back in 2019, because that film, Coup 53, was playing at the Ashland Independent Film Festival, which was all virtual that year because of COVID. Thanks a lot. I know, not tactical politics. And I had the pleasure of meeting him in there. Absolutely just a sweet, lovely guy. And I asked him to pass on our regards to Mr. Murch, because anybody who knows film is a fan of Walter Murch's. But if you have not seen it, seek out Coup 53. It's a fascinating documentary that'll give you some background on how we are where we currently are. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because again, I'm not tactical politics for this particular stream. It's just movies. But yeah, that's it. That's it for this week's episode of Physical Media Saturday. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully I'm going to try next week. We're going to probably talk about John Boorman's Excalibur, which is coming from a new 4K edition from Arrow Films. Hopefully, I said hopefully because the package is in Medford. It was supposed to be delivered today, so hopefully it'll come Monday and I'll have a chance to watch it before we get to Saturday. Anyway, thank you all for watching. By the way, if you're watching this on the YouTube replay, click like and subscribe so you'll be informed when I post these things. Thank you again for watching, and you folks have a terrific evening. Take care of yourselves.